Are you live?
Not yet. It's loading. Okay, we're live.
Yay!
Yay! All right, we're gonna wait for some people to show up since it's not
That is
exactly.
so funny. I see myself and you on mobile while we're actually. The Corona era is truly a different beast.
It really is. Okay, I'm gonna share this. Shared.
Get this as well.
Alrighty. Let's see how it looks, and we'll wait for more people to come. Nice, very nice.
Okay, now I'm going back on airplane mode.
Excellent.
Oh, I got a notification. Literary music series is live now.
Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome to Literary Music Series. I am your founder and host, Natalie, and today on a very special program, I have with me the beautiful, the magnificent, my beloved Ariel Horowitz, who is a violinist, composer, and poet.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Everyone.
today we are discussing a very applicable theme to the times, a theme that might tug on some heartstrings, hopefully, for people that are experiencing this right now, and that is silver linings. And silver linings come in many shapes, in many forms, they come at different times. And we will be exploring the nuances of all of this through an original composition by Ari, original poem by Ari. And since I am unfortunately not a composer, can't do that, we will have good old Sergei Prokofiev, but I am a poet, so we will have a poem by me. And I will give it to Ari now, who will introduce a really beautiful and moving work of poetry.
Thank you, Natalie. Those too many accolades. I feel reclapped, as they say.
It was not enough.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Before I launch in, I just want to say that I'm so proud of Natalie and of Literary Music Series for this incredible initiative. I know so many of us are really craving meaningful content online right now while we're stuck in our houses, and this is something that really combines, what Natalie is passionate about and what she's great at, which is music and poetry, and those happen to be two of my loves as well, though I can only aspire to the level of poetry that Natalie achieves on the reg. So
No.
I was going to share a different poem, actually. I had a kind of much more long form, very highly personal poem that I was excited about. And then a few days ago, I was just kind of going about my life and, watching Netflix, doing yoga, all this stuff, practicing less than I should. And all of a sudden, I heard 5 sirens in a row. And, of course, it's impossible to know whether they were COVID related, but I feel like those sirens now have a different significance. You think about wartime Europe, when the sirens would go off and everyone would have to go into their bomb shelters, or also sirens can sometimes be really beautiful and be a call to prayer. So I sat down and wrote something completely different, and that is what I'll share with everyone right now. Every couple of hours or so nowadays, I hear a siren wail out my window, punctuating the monotony of my young domestic life, of cooking and laughing and yoga. Images flood my mind of an article that I read one night at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. Men, women, and children, tears and snot encrusted on their faces because medical staff have been warned that it's too dangerous to wipe off. their lungs filling and filling as perhaps the name of a loved one graces their final whisper. I think about if the roles were reversed and an ambulance came to whisk me away, wailing a funeral dirge, and how I'd like to imagine as my lungs filled and filled until they were full, that somewhere in the distance, a young couple danced to Gloria Gaynor in the kitchen while making dinner, eyes twinkling in an unexpected silver lining. A bliss perhaps marked by a siren in the distance. A moment of solemnity slips into another hopeful dance as life goes on.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's direct, and it pierces you in a way that often, because we're in such a unique time, it's piercing you in a way that it might not otherwise pierce you if you read it at a different time.
Thank you. That means a lot. I think, yeah, the concept of finding a silver lining during this time, and I know we're going to get into this much more later, it's just, it almost feels wrong. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think we have a responsibility to find those silver linings and just, any little way that we can, because otherwise, why go on,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you have the composition that you wrote that connects to this.
I do. So this piece, it's funny because the poem that I shared is very new, and this piece was actually the first piece that I ever wrote. So it feels kind of eerily bookending in such a strange moment of time. But this piece is called Solitude, which it was written in 2017 with absolutely no inkling of the coronavirus pandemic in the back of my mind. But I'm kind of chuckling because as I was thinking about what to program for this, solitude is such, an appropriate and topical title for a piece that could have been written right now. Mm-hmm. But this piece is something that has kind of stayed with me through the years. I love to sing and play the violin at the same time. And, I was kind of messing around with this during my last year of undergrad, and it morphed into something bigger. So also, if anyone has trouble hearing or understanding the text, I'm happy to send it to you after this. So just let us know. But yeah, this is Solitude for violin with voice. Solitude, wondering who to be. I'm watching, I'm listening. I'm seeing things I don't understand. I'm girl anymore. Yet most days I feel like a child. I am in solitude, but I'm not lonely. I am in solitude, but I'm not lonely today. I am in solitude, but I'm not lonely anymore. I'm growing. I'm changing every day. I am in solitude. I'm growing. I'm changing every day. And maybe, yes, maybe, yes, maybe that is enough for now. That is enough for now. Thank you, thank you.
Wow. I don't think that there's ever, again, like the poem, there's ever been a more apt situation to play a piece like this. And I was just wondering about your own experience with living through forced solitude and how you find your own silver linings in that, and how, because when I was listening to the piece, a thought came, and there are such powerful pauses that happen so often in your composition that I feel are almost equally as significant as the notes you're singing and playing. And in those pauses, I feel like I find space for something comforting, something beautiful. Even though there's dissonance, we have like a break from it for a moment. And I really love how you did that. And I feel like that really highlights the theme of this segment so beautifully. You know, when we're feeling dissonances in music and in life, the only respite often is just a pause. And maybe it's a pause we create or a pause that happens to us, but it happens nonetheless. And I thought that was so beautiful. And I thought that the way you expressed solitude, the way you expressed it as not something that's necessarily punishment, something that ruins you, but something that allows you to expand as a person. Solitude in itself, I think about the word, and I think about how it's a word that makes you feel, like you're stuck. It's a word that makes you feel, at least for me, often closeted and just trapped and desperate for an escape. But you, in this music, with the very colorful and powerful pauses and dissonances and the lyrics, you made the word open up in a way. You made the word not be so inflicting on the soul, but instead maybe like an antidote to something that makes you grow. I don't know.
Thank you.
What was
that
your...
is so kind.
But what was your experience, I guess my question is, with that idea of seeing solitude as something not as an entrapment, but as something bigger? Or maybe you do see it as an entrapment, but, trying to find those moments of positivity when we can't. That's,
Yeah. No, that's a fantastic question. It's interesting because, this piece is now 3 years old, and it has changed drastically in that time. It's evolved a lot, both musically and also in the way that I feel about it. I think originally I came to settle on the feeling of solitude for just kind of a concept of something musical, because I felt in my life at the time, which was so much more busy than my current life, that that was the period of time where I was really struggling, and I was going through a lot. I had some pretty significant mental health issues, pretty serious eating disorder. And, it's funny because I felt like I was trapped by these things, and yet all of that was happening inside, and I was surrounded by this very bustling artistic community. And, I had so many wonderful friends and family, and it just kind of felt like I was alone in a weird way, but it was kind of inevitable because of what I was going through. It's not that I didn't have those wonderful connections with people and with art and, with lots of wonderful things. It's just that I was alone with my struggle. And it's interesting because for so long I felt like I needed help, or I needed someone to save me. And then, it took about a year after when I wrote this piece. I had performed it a number of times, and it's interesting because I didn't think of it quite as profoundly as I'm reflecting backward on it, just because of the place I am in my life. But something kind of clicked, and I realized that in a lot of ways, community is, first of all, the most important thing that we have. And it's something that, to me, I cherish above anything else. But that for certain battles, I would have to save myself. And that there was no one who could do my work for me to heal and to become whole again. And I think, it's interesting because I love the way that you talk about solitude as an entrapment. And I think that it really can feel that way. It can feel, whether we are in isolation in our own minds with our own problems or struggles, or whether we're, like now in physical isolation where for so many of us, it's unsafe to leave our homes. And, for those of us who are lucky enough to have homes, that's both a blessing and a curse, if you will. But I think that there's also something so empowering in solitude. And I think that when we can truly come home to ourselves, that's where we find the hope to, discover ourselves again. And that's kind of more how I feel about this piece now. It's interesting because, I think back to 2017 when I was, first kind of coming up with this piece, and I was so not alone. I had so many people around me all the time. I was in school, in undergrad, which is, so busy, and you're always in classes and always in rehearsals, and you go to music school. And I felt so alone. Whereas now, after having done certain work and, really looked at myself in the mirror and kind of, said, like, things need to change, and I have to, no one can do that work but me. Mm-hmm. In this moment of solitude, I feel so much more connected with the people I love. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a funny irony that I'm really only discovering now through that beautiful question that you asked. So I think that, being lonely is something that we are, as a species, I think almost more afraid of than much else. Being alone, being by oneself, being isolated from community. And that is a terrifying thing. And there are people who are truly alone, but also we can be our own best friend. We can be our own company, and we can be our own faith and our own healing. And, all of the therapists in the world could have, told me what I needed to do. But until I looked in the mirror and actually sat with myself and worked on myself, it wasn't going to happen, So I think there's something really powerful about aloneness, and it can be very exhausting, but it's also such a hopeful time, because we actually, for many of us, those of us who are not essential workers or dealing with extreme hardship, we have an opportunity to sit with ourselves and turn inward and reflect on parts of ourselves that still need healing. Mm-hmm. And we usually don't get that opportunity. So I'm excited to see where our world evolves after all of this.
Wow. Yeah, that is so beautiful. And I can say from personal experience that I feel you and I've been there. And it's the introspective qualities that we're able to tap into right now are unlike anything else that we've experienced before. And that really is the silver lining that you pointed out, being able to sit with yourself and force yourself to have those difficult but necessary reflective moments and find a deeper truth in that. And this time, this is why I wanted to talk about, finding those tiny silver linings when we can, because being alone is scary, as you said, and but it gives us that unique opportunity that you have outlined so beautifully. And we all need that. So yes.
Thank you.
I wanted to share a poem. This also kind of discusses the complexity and the kind of multifaceted elements of a silver lining, at least how I see it. It's a very fleeting concept, and it's often something that we don't want, that we approach and we see it, but we often don't see it for what it is, and maybe we miss it. And perhaps we would expect it to be greater than it really is, but oftentimes silver linings come to us in whatever way they want to, in whatever form they want to show themselves to us. It could be just a slightly lighter shade of dark, but it's still there. So I will read a poem and then I'll talk a little bit about Prokofiev and share you some of that, because I think it's a very interesting. I don't think he was thinking about silver linings when he wrote that piece. Maybe he was, but the way it's perceived to me is through thinking deeply about that concept. So I'll share the poem. Okay. I stepped over a piece of wind that tried to trip me, and walked forth into broken lights. Friend to the polished brick and cobwebbed alleys both, these well-lived feet will carry me anywhere. That's the poem.
I love that. I love that not only are you almost like surviving the wind, but that the place that you're stepping into, you know, we all think that we're going to have a happy ending, but it's still a little bit broken too. And I think that that's an image I'm going to take forward with me out of this hour. Thank you for that. It was beautiful.
I really love the concept of, you know how sometimes you look at a piece of glass and a sun ray falls on it and it distorts in a way? I like to think about that sometimes, especially when thinking about this concept right now, because it's the same, you know, effervescent sunlight that gives you life, but it's distorted. And oftentimes that's how we will see the positivity in our life. It has positive qualities, but it might be distorted to look like something else. And we have to really be in tune with our surroundings, our environment, and inwards to ourselves to be able to recognize that. And so the piece I wanted to share, it's actually a very long piece. It's about half an hour, but I won't play half an hour, don't worry. I will play just a few excerpts from a piece called Mimolетности, or Visions Fugitives, by Sergei Prokofiev. And he wrote this for some of his friends. It's a set of 22 little pieces, and each one is supposed to be like a hallucination, and they're all wildly different from one another. But the one thing that they all share is that they have this really brief and fleeting quality, something that just crosses your eye and leaves immediately. And I wanted to share a couple, just 2 or 3, and especially the first one I wanted to pay special attention to, because again, talking about the concept of the multifaceted elements of silver linings, and the fleetingness of it, that's something I want to emphasize when I'm playing this piece. There is a sensation that something really beautiful is in front of you, but it won't always be there, and it's going to fly away very quickly. And that is often, again, how these positive elements come into our life and go. They are never permanent. You know, just like a thunderstorm happens and then the next morning it's, you know, sunshine. I mean, nothing is permanent. The sunshine is not permanent. The thunderstorm is not permanent. Nature is not permanent. It just does what it wants when it wants. And so I feel that about silver linings too, and I feel that about this piece. I'll play a few minutes of it, and I hope to share with you that really effervescent, just momentary beauty that it has.
Mm-hmm. That was gorgeous, Natalie. First of all, I think actually the last time I heard that piece was when you played it for me in real life, in person. And first of all, in case not everyone knows, first of all, Natalie graduated from Juilliard today with her Bachelor of Music. So congratulations on that front. And second of all, it's Natalie's birthday tomorrow. I know this is not our scheduled programming, but everyone please wish Natalie a huge happy birthday and congratulations on her graduation.
Well, if we're hyping each other up, Ari graduated Yale like 3 or 4 days ago with the L.F. Nelson Prize, which is the, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like the best musician at Yale prize. So we have a really incredible woman here with us. So
I was just quelling. It was beautiful. You know, it's interesting because both in your poem and in your performance, I was thinking about actually another work of literature, which is a work called Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. And for anyone who might not know, Octavia Butler is she has passed on this plane, but she is, working her magic from elsewhere, yonder in other realms of reality. But she was a Black science fiction writer, and Parable of the Sower is essentially a futuristic novel about this young woman who sort of goes on this journey with kind of a odd assembly of people in a country that is completely failing and, being torn at the seams by catastrophe. And the main philosophy of the book is that change is the only constant we have. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that I was really reminded of, both in your gorgeous poem and also in your playing. And I really was thinking about Prokofiev. I mean, not only is that the oldest work on our program, when Prokofiev is usually the newest work on a classical program.
That's interesting.
But I think that, thinking about Prokofiev's life and, his lived experience was filled with so much trauma, living in the times that he was living in Soviet Russia, and thinking about how he could have possibly expressed such a dichotomy of sound. Like, we have these gorgeous moments of like almost ethereal, lullaby-like envelopment. And then it's like, there's like a huge like C sharp that's just like out of nowhere. It's like, right. So like, which is so, reminiscent of what it is to be human. And exactly like you said, we don't get to choose our own silver linings sometimes. And, I don't necessarily believe that we're not in charge of our lives to a certain extent. But a lot is decided just for us, and it's up to chance and fate. And, I think my question, what I would love to hear you share, and I would love to get your thoughts on is how, how do we, especially during this time, but, even going forward, how do we weather those changes? And not only how do we weather them, but how do we express change, and how do we conceptualize change, and how do we change along with the change that is happening to us?
Well, I think this prompts me to go back to actually something you said earlier about how being alone forces us to look inside of ourselves. And I think the one constant is change, but I think many people will argue me on this, and we do change as people all the time, but I do fundamentally believe that our soul and its contents, no matter how much we change our behavior towards certain environments and how we feel about ourselves, the contents of our soul, I think, always stay intact. And I think what you said, looking inwards and being honest with yourself and finding elements inside your character that can improve and that you can work on, I think for me, that's how I've been weathering changes, and that's how I think it's been possible for many of my friends to weather changes. Because, like you said before, we can have influence from everyone in our lives telling us what to do, but like you said, the only way that we will conquer, internal demons, we will grow out of a skin that we had in the past that wasn't fitting to us. The only way we will do that is if we go to our core. And I think weathering changes is necessary and requires that. And another thing is speaking a little bit about, Prokofiev, and I know this is a little impromptu, but I wanted to perhaps, because we were talking about this at the end, share a poem that I sent to my subscribers regarding Marina Tsvetaeva, who lived around this time too. She's younger than Prokofiev, but she did endure the plight of Soviet Russia, and just
Please.
thinking about what they both went through, we, especially for her, but also for him and for just collective Soviet society, and I think I'm not comparing what we're going through now to the Soviet society, but the feeling of desperation and just kind of just internal trauma caused by external factors, I feel as though they perhaps didn't want to find silver linings. They perhaps felt so, I don't want to speak for them, but it was almost impossible to do so in such a circumstance. And so that makes, the lullaby quality of this piece that comes out amidst all of the sharp, that stuff. When you hear that soaring line out of nowhere, that is all the more powerful because you think about the fact that perhaps it was difficult for composers to, unleash and put out this type of material in a time that was so just traumatic for your soul. And it makes the concept of them finding those silver linings that they didn't want to find all that much more poignant, because oftentimes we don't want to find them, but we have to find them because you won't survive in any other way. And I feel like that is the purpose of creating art during these times. That is the purpose of listening and receiving art during these times, is we have to, you know what I mean? We have to do this. Otherwise there is no point, And for, I'm thinking about Shostakovich, I'm thinking about Prokofiev, I'm thinking about, I'll share her poem actually, Marina Tsvetaeva. If any of you subscribe, I wrote a little essay on her this week to talk about silver linings. The poem itself has nothing to do with what she was going through, and the melodic qualities and the lullaby elements of the visual Fugitive don't really remind you of the plight between the White Army and the Red Army during the October Revolution. But that's the point, because you want to still retain a sense of humanity. And so and silver linings, I think, are the what lead you there, because you have to find them, and once you do, that is your retention of just like a sliver of humanity during really difficult times. And I wanted to share this poem by Marina Tsvetaeva, and I know this is kind of impromptu, but I feel like it just naturally can come out.
Please. I'm ready.
So Marina Tsvetaeva, just a little background. She was born in the end of the 19th century, and she killed herself in 1941. And she endured a life that we cannot imagine right now. I mean, she had to give up her daughter to an orphanage who ended up dying there. Her husband and son were both arrested. and one of her daughters went into exile, and her son went into exile and died there. Her husband died eventually, she lived through the October Revolution. She lived through famine, the Moscow famine, afterwards, and eventually she was driven into isolation that destroyed her to the point that she ended her life. And to think about someone having a life like that, mm-hmm. and being able to listen to and read a poem like this that she wrote, I'll find it for you. Since this is impromptu, I actually have to find it now. Let's see.
Oh yeah, while you're finding it, I loved what you said about the silver linings making us or returning us to our own humanity.
Yeah.
And I think that I would almost even go a step further and argue that silver linings and hope is what defines humanity.
Yes.
And I think that, when we lose hope, we lose ourselves and we lose each other. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can't wait. Sorry, I didn't mean to distract you.
No, that was a really beautiful addition. I'm really glad you said that. Okay, let me see. Okay. So this poem is called A Kiss on the Forehead by Marina Tsvetaeva. A kiss on the forehead erases misery. I kiss your forehead. A kiss on the eyes lifts sleeplessness. I kiss your eyes. A kiss on the lips is a drink of water. I kiss your lips. A kiss on the forehead erases memory. And that was written in 1917, which was the year of the October Revolution, and that was the year also that Prokofiev wrote this piece.
That's amazing. I love that she doesn't kiss away the memory. That's like, I got goosebumps. That's really powerful, I think.
Wow, I'm really glad you brought that up.
Me too.
Because, wow, yes, if you look at the progression of the poem, a kiss on the forehead erases misery, I kiss your forehead. A kiss on the forehead erases memory. She doesn't erase the memory. I didn't even notice that until you brought it up.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so interesting is like, even in all of this, I feel like, a lot of people, there's a trendy term floating around in, self-help circles called toxic positivity these days. And, it's kind of like, well, so I'll give an example for anyone who's maybe not familiar with it. Like, so I break my leg, okay, let's say. I come to you, my good friend Natalie, my leg's broken. I was gonna, go to yoga class later today. I'm so upset. And you say, oh, well, it could be worse. It's okay. It's all going to be fine. It's like, no, dude, my leg's broken. Like, so yeah. And that's kind of like what, a lot of people are now sort of, condemning the toxic positivity, or like the, just put on a smile. And essentially what that's doing is it's erasing the memory of what happened. We're erasing the reality. But I think that, what we're discussing and what I think is so, what's so crucial for us during this time is not to forget, what's happening both to us and around the world. I mean, I'm sure all of us are inundated with so much news, it's horrible. I think about, for example, very close to my heart is the plight of the Navajo Nation right now, completely devastated by the coronavirus. And it's a food desert, not many grocery stores, not many hospitals. But, there's a difference between like, oh, everything's going to be fine, and, oh, I'm so miserable, there's nothing we can do. I feel like it's like finding, not to, overuse the adage, but literally finding the silver lining. It's like, it's not perfect and it's still broken. And we can acknowledge, both the memories and the present of the brokenness, but we can move forward in, whatever way that we can to make it a little bit lighter. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that poem really like struck with me, is that, silver linings don't make everything better. They make things a little bit better, but there's still more to heal, and that's okay. And that's what our collective responsibility becomes, Yeah. So
exactly.
I loved that. Thank you for sharing that. That was the best surprise ever.
Yeah, I just felt it I didn't even notice what you noticed. That was so beautiful, and it just changes the whole poem. Yes, you really said it so perfectly. It makes things a little bit better, but we can't get to the point where we forget what happened,
Yeah.
because that's the driving force. And silver linings won't the whole point of silver linings is that they happen in a time of difficulty, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't be silver linings, just like a beautiful, sunrise after a thunderstorm wouldn't mean anything if the day before that was also, super sunny and warm and beautiful. It would just be like another beautiful sunrise.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're approaching an hour. Wow, that
Oh, really?
went by fast.
It went by so fast. I hope it went by fast for everyone watching too.
I know, I hope it went by fast for everyone watching. Well, I'm really proud of you, and I think you're incredible, and talking to you is like a balm to my soul.
Oh,
And
I feel exactly
I
the
love
same.
you, and this was really incredible.
This was one of my favorite hours I have spent in the last very, very long time. So thank you, really, thank you so much for having me. I love everything that you're about. I love you. I love what you stand for. I think that, I'm just so happy to be included in this incredible project. And I think that it's going to change the way that our generation thinks about what a concert is. And I'm really excited to be even a little part of it. So I'm very proud of you.
You're a big part of it, and in the future, I hope you will also be a big part of it.
Let me know, girl, any day. I'm not doing much. So, yeah. Really.
I'll just hit you up. All right, well, thank you for tuning in to our third installment of Literary Music Series, and we will see you next time.
Yes, definitely. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Natalie.